Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted, episode 280, the Tautology edition. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today is March 31st, 2017.
Okay, we got a busy day. We're going to skip the weather update, and we're going to talk about a trial in LA. Before we get there, normally I like to point out oxymorons. They're interesting to me. You guys know of Army intelligence and, two words that don't go together. Well, there's actually a thesaurus, and you can look up the opposite of oxymoron, which is tautology, because our story today is tautology when two words go perfectly together, like dead corpse. Well, we have one called Bruno trial, and that's going to work really well as we talk about tautology. George, there's a trial going on in LA this week. What was the last famous LA trial you can remember?
Kevin, trials from LA. Let's begin with Errol Flynn's rape case, or Perry Mason, or the Hillside Strangler, or Rodney King, or O.J. Simpson. Where do you stop?
I know. Oh, the Michael Jackson
Charles Manson,
states.
For goodness sakes.
I know. So, L.A. in trials.
And this is just as exciting as the Charles Manson case.
The amazing thing here, yes, George is right. When there is a trial in L.A., it is amazingly interesting to journalists who. This is like the start of trial TV years ago, was just around the O.J. Case out in L.A. And we could start a program just about, I'm going to say, bastard bishops as a separate TV channel. This is about Bishop Bruno and the alleged conduct he had with St. James the Great, a church that has a sad history. It was a really full church in the Episcopal Church. The Episcopal Church went astray. St. James the Great says, well, we're going to go with Southern Cone and the future ACNA. They get sued. You can't keep your building no matter where you want to go. And then it just got caught up in this minutia called the California court system. And eventually, after never really going to trial, the courts decided there's actually is a Dennis canon and that the property belongs to the Diocese of L.A. Whoop. The bishop has a $15 million property in his hands, given to him by the courts. He thinks he's always had it, probably has. And he has to decide what to do with it. Well, I'm not going to have an empty church in our diocese. I'm going to put a congregation in with a priest in charge. And meanwhile, I'm going to scout real estate and see if I can't get rid of this property. However, this priest in charge has talent, George.
2014, the Episcopal congregation relaunches. And at first, they need to have financial support from the diocese. Very few people held out all those years while the ACNA congregation was in there. And they needed financial support from the diocese. Well, they brought in a priest, Cindy Voorhees, and she did the unexpected. She grew an Episcopal church. She grew it so rapidly that within about a year and a half, 2 years, they were looking at a $500,000 budget. They were they had, almost 200 people. She was an out-and-out success. She did the totally unexpected. And sometimes people like to think that only only conservative clergy grow congregations. Well, that is true if on the macro scale, but there's some dreadful conservative clergy who can close a church down faster than you know what.
Amen.
There are also the quality of the priest really does matter. And in this case, they had a fantastic priest. Did what was necessary. John Bruno goes in May of 2015 and announces from the pulpit to the congregation he's shutting down the church. He's accepted an offer of $15 million for the building, and it's going to become condos.
Oh, wow.
Well, and Canon Voorhees, she's not going to lose out. Bishop Bruno says to her, Here, I've gotten you a job paying $111,000 a year with the Compass Rose Society. Isn't that wonderful?
That is so thoughtful of the bishop. Oh,
I would love to be able to be. Well, that's one of the rabbit holes we can go down in the story.
yes.
Is how does he have the ability to give out jobs for a charity that pays so well? I'd love to be able to find out how.
All right, let's stop that rabbit trail right there. Back to the trial.
So she puts out a letter to the congregation saying that I don't want to lead this church in diaspora. I think we should. I just don't know what to do. I'm so very sad. Anglican Inc. got a copy of that letter from a member of the congregation. We put it up on our website. And at that last Sunday, the congregation essentially said to her, "We want to continue." And she said, "Okay." And Canon Voorhees decided not to take the money, but to take an unpaid position as priest to a congregation locked out of their building, because the diocese went in, changed the lock, took out all the ecclesiastical stuff, essentially treated the Episcopal congregation as if it was the ACNA congregation, and sent the sheriff's deputies to chase them off the property.
Now, George, I want to back up here. I hope you're seeing a contrast here. It's important when we get into large stories like this that we point out that immediately here we have a contrast between Bishop Bruno and the priest in charge in their conduct. One sees money and likes it. One is offered money and says no. I got to tell my kids this too. You don't always have to follow the money. Maybe. All right. So she alleges. Yeah. Another rabbit hole. So basically, we get to the point now where St. James, the priest in charge, have made accusations, and they've finally gotten to a trial.
No. Well, yes and no. It was not the priest who made the accusations.
Correct.
Lay people formed an organization called Save St. James the Great.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought charges of misconduct against John Bruno, saying that he lied to them, alleging that he sold this without permission of the diocesan standing committee or board. That, in essence, they brought two types of charges: that he did not follow procedures governing the sale and use of property, and second, he was a rotten human being. And that began a series of legal proceedings that have culminated in 3 days of hearings in Pasadena, California. And it's not actually a trial. They now call it a hearing.
They call it a hearing. You and I know it's really a trial. But we also know, based on history, George, that if you take a bishop in the Episcopal Church to trial, basically no matter what he has been accused of doing or has done, or even if he's found guilty, the chances of this person being deposed, losing his pension, and ending up a regular citizen is zero. There's zero chance of that, right?
No.
Nope.
Incompetence is not crime.
Right.
Being a horrible human being is not a crime. There are bishops. There have only been two bishops in my lifetime who have suffered the penalties of being kicked out. The first was a guy named Cy Jones, Bishop of Montana. And actually, I helped him in his legal defense going back 20 years now. Mm-hmm. Cy Jones, when he was a younger priest, engaged in sexual harassment. And years later, he's now Bishop of Montana, and the charges come out, and he confesses to the presiding bishop, Ed Browning, yes, he did this, and he's very sorry, and he wants to make amends. Ed Browning said, "Oh, that's too bad, but I can't hear your confession because I'm going to now discipline you." And because it was sexual harassment, and remember, this is the 90s, and I won't hear me roar, feminist lobby ran Cy Jones out of office. Now, he was guilty, but you have lots of bishops doing bad things. You have adultery happening, and I won't go down those rabbit holes.
Rabbit trails here, rabbit trails there. Quick mention.
15 years later.
Benison.
15 years later, we have the Charles Benison trial.
Yep.
Charles Benison was grossly incompetent in his handling of the Diocese of Pennsylvania. Charles I have a personal experience with Charles Benison, so I've been involved in both trials, if you will. Charles Benison nearly bankrupted the diocese.
Right. He bad bishop example, but what happened to Benison?
He was hammered.
Yeah.
He was hammered because when he was a priest, he overlooked
sexual
abuse of a teenage girl by his brother, who was his youth minister. So both Cy Jones and Charles Benison were nailed and found guilty of conduct that they committed while they were priests, not when they were bishops.
Odd.
So John Bruno is being accused of misconduct while he was a bishop. And it's conduct of being a rotten human being, a liar, a cheat, a bully, versus, and the second half is not following proper fiduciary rules and then handling property. So that's where we are with this trial. That's
where we are. Day one testimony, and we're about 11 minutes in, so we can transition to the second part of the story. But day one testimony, what surprised you?
Second morning, first day, Canon Evans testified on the stand for 3 hours. John Bruno testified. And the next morning was cross-examination.
Right.
And in the cross-examination...
The first day, we kind of knew all these facts. Everything they talked about was a full-out knowledge to Anglican TV, and Anglican Unscripted. We, of course, we've heard all this. Second day.
And the first day, Bishop Bruno said, I did all this stuff, but being a jerk is not against the rules.
And I looked,
I'm the Bishop of Los Angeles.
CAD in 6.4? Nope. Being a jerk's fine.
Yeah. Next morning is cross-examination. Bishop Bruno's attorney, who's the vice chancellor of the Diocese of Los Angeles, cross-examines Canon Voorhees. And it was a fascinating cross-examination, and this went for an hour and a half. This poor woman was on the stand for 4 hours over 2 days. And it just some little more rabbit holes, Kevin. One of our friends of this show is a fellow named Frank Train. Frank Train was an incident where Canon Voorhees met Frank Train at a Starbucks. Frank Train was the one who gave the money to the church in the 80s to build the parish hall, and he was part of the ACNA congregation. She met with Frank Train, and Frank Train told her some stuff. And the attorney for Bishop Bruno tried to impeach Canon Voorhees' credibility by his nefarious associations with the evil Frank Train. And then the Canon Voorhees was engaged in a vast right-wing conspiracy, my words, that included Anglican Inc. Yes, we are on, besides the Archbishop of Canterbury, we are on John Bruno's enemies list.
True, yes. There's not many people...
There was a social media campaign. Now, the only right-wingers in this social media campaign were George and Kevin, but there was a social media campaign, and insiders in the diocese were also trying to undermine John Bruno. And then a rookie mistake was made by Bishop Bruno's attorney.
And
a lawyer at trial. Now, Perry Mason never made this mistake.
No.
And this was a Perry Mason moment in the trial, okay? This is why we have court TV for things like this. It was the attorney, woman named Julia Dean Larson, said, I understand that you spoke with Bishop Mary Glasspool on June 16th, 2015 about the Newport Beach property. And Canon Voorhees said, yes, we bumped into each other in the ladies' room. And we exchanged some words. And what were these words? Well, I can't say because they were under the stole. They were in confidence, priest-pastoral relationship.
Ooh, there was a prayer book in the bathroom. All right.
And
little confession.
And this was challenged by the bishop's attorney. What did you and Bishop Glasspool talk about? And so the panel, led by Bishop Hollerith of Southern Virginia, went into recess to discuss can or should Cindy Voorhees breach this pastoral confidence. And they ruled that this was not a proper priest-penitent conversation. You don't have those in the ladies' room, this was just two girls chatting. So, and the
So break for
bishops on the panel
commercial.
said,
The bishops, say you have to tell. You break for commercial. You have, a little bit of a what's it called? Cliffhanger. They come back from commercial. She's sitting there at the desk to be asked the question, and what was her answer?
She said, "Well, Bishop Glasspool said to me, I've gotten in really bad trouble with Bishop Bruno over my supporting St. James and Newport Beach. I went to the standing committee and I said, we really need to help these people in Newport Beach. We shouldn't sell this property. We should do the right thing." And Bishop Bruno went bananas, such that we've had to go into mediation because he wants me out of here. And in fact, I'm just trying to hold on because in a month's time is General Convention in Salt Lake City, and I need to find a job. He's running me out of town.
Wow.
And then Bishop Glasspool concludes by saying, he scares out of me. Now, Kevin, part of this trial is to show that Bishop Bruno is a bully and a thug and not a good priest. And you've got the only lesbian bishop in the Episcopal Church saying that he ran her out of town because she tried to do the right thing.
Headline: Bruno runs lesbian out of town.
This is
That's nice.
This is when Perry Mason gets the guy who could admit that yes, he was the murderer on the stand. This was one of those courtroom moments because if this woman was either an idiot or she didn't know the answer to the question, because essentially one of the charges is that he engaged in terrible conduct, that he was a bully and pastorally insensitive and shouldn't be bishop. And now you've got his suffragan, who's a lesbian, who's a cause celeb for the progressive wing, saying that this guy ran her out of town.
And
this is wonderful stuff, Kevin.
It is. And to be fair, and this is just what I've heard, that she is kind of orthodox and kind of conservative. She's not, I hate to say, and I use this all the time, and I shouldn't. She's not Catherine Jefferts Schori. That's what I hear.
This is actually someone who has a resume, and someone who has a record of achievement.
You're killing me.
Someone who is not passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. We have friends in the Diocese of Maryland, out of where she came from, mm-hmm. and said that if you take out the lesbian side of things, she's a perfectly wonderful Orthodox Episcopal priest.
Wow.
Now, I know that both conservatives and liberals will be offended by my making that suggestion. Yep. But in other words, this is not a token the way Catherine Jefferts Schori was a token. This is a competent person who, on the merits of her experiences, was elected suffragan bishop of Los Angeles. So, Kevin, I just think it's neat that Anglican Inc. is in the same group of people as Mary Glasspool on the enemies list of John Bruno.
It's just
that
amazing.
Is such a compliment. I'm so excited.
It is exciting. Okay, so they had the hearing. That's all done and good. We learned that Bishop Bruno tries to run a lesbian bishop out of town. That's still in the works because she doesn't have a new job somewhere else yet, does she?
Yeah, she did. She has last year. Mm-hmm. It's actually November 2015. She was offered a position of Assistant Bishop of New York.
I remember that. That's right. She's coming over here.
Her father was a rector of a parish in Staten Island, so it's a good home. It's a good fit for her, and from all the things that we've heard, she's doing a remarkably good job.
All right. So
now,
what happened?
You like that sort of thing?
George. This is not the. What show is that? Whatever. So what happens now? So they're going to come back sometime about Easter, and they're going to proclaim what?
My expectation is that they will issue a mixed rule. Mm-hmm. They will say, yes, the bishop has the right and responsibility to do whatever he wants, and it doesn't matter. Nobody can contradict him. But yes, he is also a bastard. I think they're going to. But the question is, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Now, he is stepping down from office. And they've already elected a successor, and they've elected a man who has a reputation as a great pastor. So, in other words, they're trying to overcome the deficit that they've had.
Good.
I don't think nothing meaningful really will take place.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, St. James the Great will get their property back, the church will restarted, the new bishop will try to make everybody happy. See, if John Bruno could be embarrassed into doing the right thing, he would have done it about 2 years ago.
Yeah, or 20 years ago. I mean, this is not you and I have heard things for years and years and years and years about Bishop Bruno allegedly, and so it's not like this. None of this was ever a surprise to us, George. Were you surprised?
Not at all. And in fact, I mentioned here's one of the rabbit holes that I do want to run down a tiny bit. You can pull me
you
back.
got seconds. Go.
Bruno refused to testify in the Charles Benison case.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Benison, his bad acts took place in the Diocese of Los Angeles, and the Diocese of Los Angeles was asked to turn over its paperwork to the trial so that they could determine what the bishop at the time had done, and Bruno refused to cooperate, saying, "You can't make me." So this was one of the difficulties that they had in convicting Benison, was the non-cooperation of John Bruno. 5 years later, look where we are today.
Yep. You can't make me. George, I want to thank you for a great show and updates on an LA trial. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And I can be served by legal process.
Yeah, don't mail me. I alleged myself all the way through this. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 280 of Anglican Unscripted.